Yeah, hello, hello, hello. Wow. Hi, everybody. My name is Dalibor. As you can hear from my name, I'm clearly German, right? I live and work for Oracle in Germany, and I work on OpenJDK of all things. So, the open source community where, open source Java is being developed. And I've come to Oracle through an acquisition. So I started to work at Sun in 2008. Sun was acquired a year later. It wasn't me, right? But then I moved from the engineering side to the product management side at Oracle. And I do, this and that, everything needs to be doing to make sure that the OpenJDK community is successful. And it's always a pleasure to be here in Croatia, in Zagreb in particular, and to be able to chat in my mother tongue, in theory. But in practice, of course, I would then have to do just-in-time translation of technical terms like zero GC, and that just doesn't work so well for me because I don't actually use these languages in my work. So I'll do this in English. I hope that's fine. But of course, we can chat later in Croatian, Bosnian, Serbian, whatever you like. That being said, I work for Oracle, as you may well know, and me and my colleagues have always the same slide in all presentations. I'm sure you know it by heart by now. If you don't, take a moment to enjoy it. In short, don't trust a word what I say, right? Make up your own mind and decisions in your research. Don't make any decisions based on my presentation. And speaking of my presentation, so the one question I regularly get, right? I've been doing Java development, open source stuff for more than 15 years now. Is a question about what's happening with Java. Is it shrinking? We had this presentation this morning about the universe, and there was this big bang at the beginning, which for Java was in '95, and then things expanded, and what happens? How does the universe end? The one theory we heard was that universe may end up shrinking, but it probably won't. But for that to happen, we have to stand still at some point and to reverse the progress. And Java is doing anything but standing still. On our side, we're actually moving the platform forward and have increased the pace over the past couple of years. Since the acquisitions, there's been now 5 releases, 7, 8, and then just in the past year and a half, 9, 10, 11, with 12 on the way in March, and 13 already being developed in OpenJDK repositories. And so the platform itself is not standing still. So that doesn't provide any reason for Java to shrink. But the other question is, all right, the platform is moving forward, but what about the community? What about the ecosystem? And the ecosystem as well is not shrinking, it's growing. The number of developers who use Java is actually growing, thanks to initiatives like Oracle Academy and others who bring Java into schools to students and make it their first programming language, but also thanks to this huge community of developers for whom Java is their favorite programming language. And in many surveys, analysts will tell us that Java is the #1 language based on where it's used, based on how people use it. It's the premier choice for developers in the cloud, and every major cloud vendor has some kind of a Java offering in this space, including Oracle, of course. And there are, of course, many virtual machines running out there. So it's a really healthy community to be a part of. And at Oracle, we're continuing to support this ecosystem, support this growth, by both on our end, developing the platform and investing into it, but also by supporting you in your quest for knowledge through things like the Java Magazine, which is a free magazine that features content from developers for developers, but also by supporting initiatives like the Java Champions, which is where developers who are expert in Java topics get together, or JDutches, and encouraging Java user groups to form everywhere around the world and provide, meetups, regular technical exchanges, as well as conferences like this one. And I think a great slide that Branko showed this morning was just how much is happening in this space. May is full of conferences. If I had nothing else to do in my life, I could basically be going to one conference after the next every single week of the year, just around Java, just around the world. There's just so much excitement, interest in this platform, and that's great. And so we want to keep that. We want to keep those virtues that have made Java successful by ensuring that it remains open and free. And that means that we're developing it in the open, as open source, in an open community, in OpenJDK. That means that you can get free the latest releases and continue to benefit from those, but also by preserving, the other aspects like quality and security. Java is renowned for being a solid, rock-solid, stable platform that has received its praise for a long time simply by being very successful in giving you insurance that you can move from one release to the next, and we're preserving that. We're keeping Java secure. We do regular improvements in this area to follow with the latest standards, such as TLS 1.3 that came out in 9 a year ago. And we're investing in your productivity by improving both the language as well as the underlying VM, as well as the tooling, so that you can get your job done safer and faster. You can write better code, more reliable code, as you move from version to version. But those are, in some sense, soft goals. On the technical side, in the actual development of the platform itself, we're very much driven by the modern development trends. And for us, a strong component there is the cloud. When in the cloud is an environment where time and space translate directly to money. So, if you can improve the density of how much of a workloads you can pack into your instances in the cloud, that's a benefit that translates into your money down the road. And so a lot of the work we're doing, and have been doing the past couple of years, has been focused on making the JVM smaller, both in terms of the space it takes on disk, but also in terms of how it performs in memory, so that your objects are actually smaller, your strings are smaller when you move from 8 to 11. That's a big benefit. Also, another aspect is you're paying for time when you're on the cloud. And so it really matters that your applications start up faster, because you don't want to be paying for the same thing over and over again. And so we've put a lot of work into improving the startup time of the platform as we went from 8 to 11. And I'll talk more about that in my presentation later today. But also what you want to have is you want to have predictable costs in a sense. You don't want to avoid running into those long-running, unpredictable garbage collection events. And so we put in quite some work into Java over the past years to introduce new forms of garbage collectors with JetGC that have a lot more predictable behavior, where you can fine-tune them to basically say what the latencies are you're willing to accept in your applications. And last but not least, for you to be able to assure yourself and analyze any problems that may come up, we've also invested into making the serviceability and profiling and tooling around the JDK more open, and open source the various components we had around this to make them part of the Open JDK. And for us, this has been something that we've been working on for more than a decade now. We have created Open JDK in 2006. And over the past year and a half, we have worked within Oracle to publish the various bits and pieces that were still closed source around Open JDK within the Open JDK community, making it more open. But also we've used this new model that we've developed to deliver other benefits and enhancements much faster into the hands of developers, while continuing to support the rest of the ecosystem. And so, as Branko said this morning, yes, Java is absolutely still free. And in fact, at Oracle, since more than 18 months now, we have been providing thoroughly tested, high-quality Oracle OpenJDK binaries on jdkjava.net. So not just the full open source code, so that you can go ahead and build your own if you want to. And so if you want to build a Crow JDK, the Croatian JDK, based on OpenJDK, you could do that, right? But you could also use our own, right? Oracle's OpenJDK binaries on jdkjava.net to run on Linux, on Windows, Mac, the platforms you care about. And we're doing this on a 6-monthly basis. So every 6 months, there is a new release coming out. Again, binaries for us for those 6 months for updates. And then we move to the next one, which means if you write applications where you can follow this trend, then you basically can always stay on this free open source version. And if you want something else, we also offer that as well. And so, where in the past we had a model where we had this OpenJDK as a source code basis and Oracle JDK as the thing most people use, we had both free use and commercial use terms. We now have a much clearer model where we have the OpenJDK as the open source free binary from Oracle, as well as the Oracle JDK as the binary for our customers that you can use if you want to have commercial terms, if you want to have support, and if you want to have a subscription. And that way, by making these two interchangeable, so that you can move from the Oracle JDK to OpenJDK for those services where you don't want to have support, or you don't care about basically getting commercial terms from Oracle, you can do so. If you want to move back, you can do so as well, because we have put in the work to make these two easily interchangeable. And to do so, over the past 18 months, we have opened up features that were commercial, like application CDS. And I'm sure all of you know what class data sharing is, because it's a feature that's been there for the past, 15 years or so. Basically, it's a way for the JVM to remember in an efficient form what the metadata around the classes is that it's been parsed, so that it can actually load up the RT jar in the past faster into memory, and your startup improves. There is an option called -x dump share that you can use since Java 1.5 to do so. It wasn't on by default, of course, so you have to do it, yada, yada, yada. And we've extended this mechanism to also apply to applications. So your Spring Boot, your Jakarta e-container can benefit from the same mechanism and start up faster. And that's now part of open source since JDK 10. And it's actually on by default in the next version, JDK 12. And you don't have to do anything, it'll just be faster when you move to it. Then we've opened up Project ZGC, which is a low latency garbage collector that's been developed by our team in Sweden. And it's an experimental feature targeted for large heaps, and it's, as I'll talk later today in my presentation, really good at what it does. We've opened up the flight recorder, which is a monitoring feature built right in the JVM, and just like a flight recorder, lets you know when things go wrong in case of a crash, that you understand what caused it, what sort of events led to it, which you can turn on when you need it. You can just leave running as you need it because it has very low overhead. And you can use mission control, another project we opened up over the past year, to analyze those logs and to get insight into what's actually causing performance issues or other problems in your applications with minimal overhead. And so we've done a lot of work over the past year and a half to make this transition work for everybody. The other question I get is, so right, you now have these new release cadence, 6-month releases. Are things getting to be a bit slower? Like you used to have 4 years, 3 years, 2 years before. You can't do that much work in 6 months, right? So what are you guys actually doing? And so in the good old days, we had this release model where we had big releases like 6, 7, 8, 9 come in every couple of years. And in theory, let's say every 2 years. In practice, it was always a bit longer. And so when you have releases that come every couple of years, what we did was to in order to deliver features our customers needed, to have interim releases, update releases that actually packed features. So for example, we had 8 update 20, 8 update 40, 8 update 60, each one of which came after 6 months and delivered additional features into the existing Oracle JDK. So we had a sort of a 6-monthly model already, but since those releases were driven by features rather than timing, at some point in time we had to move on to the next version, but it wasn't quite sure when it's going to be because there was always some big project like lambdas or modularity that required us to reassemble our schedules. And in physics, we have this Heisenberg principle where you either know, I think, where you are or how fast you're going. And so in JDK development, we have a similar principle where either we know what kind of features we have or we know when we're going to deliver them. And so we choose to, instead of focusing on what features we have, to choose on when we're going to deliver them and deliver what's ready at that given point in time. And so if we had adopted the same scheme that we used before, we would then have Java 9 followed by Java 9.1 6 months later and so forth and so forth. But we wanted to be able to deliver any feature that's ready at any given release. And that means we needed to be able to deliver VM changes, language changes on a 6-monthly basis. And that's only possible if you actually are able to update the specification for the language and the VM on a 6-monthly basis. And so that means every 6 months you need to have some kind of a feature release, so 9, 10, 11, 12, to be able to slot in whatever piece of innovation is ready at the time in the right place. So it doesn't have to wait until it's again time for a VM update or something like that. And that's why we now have this cycle where every 6 months there is a new version that increases the class file version that offers opportunity to actually deliver language changes, VM changes, API changes. And we do. But of course, a 6-monthly changes of improvements is not ideal for everybody. Some people have some applications that they prefer to stay on the same stack for as long as possible. That's fine. That's why we have long-term support releases, and 11 is the first one of those. And long-term support releases get a lot more support than your 6-monthly release cadence does. In fact, if you're Oracle customer using JDK 8, you can get Oracle support until 2025 and then still until then, for another 6 years, have time to look at your migration plans to JDK 11 or even, JDK 17 at some point down the road. And so those long-term support options give our customers the ability to plan their migrations according to their own constraints and abilities and needs. Of course, though, long-term support costs time and money, so it is something we make available to our customers. We make OpenJDK, though, available for free to everybody throughout the way. And given that the rate of change in the 6-monthly cadence is different, we're also working hard to ensure that it's actually easy for you once you are moving between 9, 10, 10 to 11, 11, 12, that it's actually much easier to go from these versions than it was in the past between 6 and 7, 7 and 8, and 9. I'm sure many of you have moved from 6 to 8 at some point, and it was probably not a case of moving, doing this migration in a week or two. It was, you had to plan a lot, you had to do a lot of changes. The difference in functionality and features between the 6-monthly releases is much, much smaller. And I'll show you a slide about that in just a minute. So what we've done here is to move to a more predictable release cadence so you can actually anticipate when a new release is coming. The improvements are coming incrementally. You're not getting these revolutionary changes that change everything every couple of years. You're getting smaller slices of changes every 6 months. You get new features. You get faster releases, faster JVMs sooner, and you get less disruption. And so we're not going into sustaining mode. We're actually not just doing a bunch of bug fixes and going to release. We're delivering features still, but a lot fewer than in the past over 6 months, but at least as many in total. So JDK 9 took, I think, 3.5 years to develop. We had more than 80 features. Well, we had 12 features in 10. We had 17 features in 11. We have 8 features in 12. And that's just 18 months. So the rate of innovation hasn't actually changed. We're still packing in a lot of improvements for you every 6 months, though. And it's much easier to adjust to those every 6 months than to actually think about how do these 80 changes impact me 3 or 4 years down the road. And so that makes it easier to consume those updates and to consume those new releases. And we do use this vehicle to deliver innovations across the board. So in JDK 11, we have improvements to both the Java language, to the JVM itself specification. We have improvements to the implementation of JVM, new interfaces, new garbage collectors. We have new APIs, HTTP, TLS, whatever you have. We have basically new tools, changes across the board. And that's exactly what we want. We want the same thing, and are doing the same thing for 12. Again, changes in the language, a new language preview feature with speech expressions, changes in the implementation of the VM with the new garbage collector, Shenandoah, but also changes across the APIs and changes in the underlying code. And it's much easier to adjust, if you're an IDE vendor, for example, to one language change every 6 months than to adjust to a dozen of them every 2 years or 3 years. So it's a very different situation for investment and for innovation that I think benefits the whole ecosystem. And it's not the end of this, right? We're already working on 13, but since we've just started working on 13, there are no features planned for 13 yet. What will be in 13? Well, we'll know over time as features get ready, get proposed. There is an open, transparent process you can follow. You can participate in as well. And if you're developing features, let us know that they are ready for inclusion. And it's not just Oracle who's actually making this work. We're not the only contributors. I looked at the statistics for JDK 11, and we were, of course, the largest contributor, which is not surprising given that Oracle is the steward of Java. We've done around 80% of the changes going into 11, but the other 20% came from companies like SAP, Red Hat, IBM, Alibaba, Google, and most interestingly, sure, those are big companies, SAP, Red Hat, Google, sure. But the fifth largest contributor were individual developers, people like Doug Lee and maybe like yourself, who had bugs they wanted to fix, who had features they wanted to have done. And so OpenJDK has evolved over those past 10 years to become a great home for developing and moving Java forward, where not just the big players are determining what you get, but also individual developers can participate and do participate in shaping those releases. Of course, at Oracle, we sell software, we sell support. We offer long-term support for our releases, starting at $25 per month per processor on server side, or less as the number gets bigger of processors, or $2.50 per month per user on a desktop. And that's great if you need long-term support, basically. If you need something you can reliably get from Oracle for the duration you need it. So you have a choice to basically get support for 11, for 8, and so forth. Or, of course, you can build your own with OpenJDK or go somewhere else. And we continue to not just change this environment in which Java is being developed and used, but we also continue to look at areas where we can improve the platform itself to make it better for new use cases. Because not shrinking, not dying doesn't just require not standing still. It also requires looking at new opportunities, new niches for Java to actually settle in and become successful in. And so things we're looking at are making Java even better for containers, and we've done a lot of work around that, around Docker in the past releases, improving our performance, of course, improving the ways we deal with data, with the hardware acceleration, and scaling better. And a lot of this work is actually taking place all in open source, in the OpenJDK community. The way we do this is we have a whole bunch of projects that explore those ideas, that try to see how far they can push the JVM to solve certain problems. And those projects that are successful, those ideas that actually show to be worthwhile, that get the acceptance from the community, they then finally make it into the JDK 12, 13, and so forth. The big projects right now are Valhalla, where we're looking at better representations of data types within the JVM. Loom, where we're looking at making it easier to write horribly multi-threaded applications without having to use threads and the overhead that comes with them. And then Panama, where we're looking at making it easy to actually use native functionality from your operating system, from other libraries, from Java, without having to go through the somewhat cumbersome way of using C and C++ and JNI and all these things, and instead making it possible to use this straight from Java directly. And then, of course, there is Project Amber, where we are working to look at different ways we can make the platform itself better and more productive for you to write code in, and so on and so forth. And so all of this stuff is actually, like I said, happening in the open. If you want to participate in OpenJDK in some form or shape, this is actually the best way to do it, to provide feedback, to get those early access releases of these projects like Valhalla, Panama, JPackage, and so forth. Try them out and see if they solve your problems, for example. And if they don't, let us know why they don't do that. So we can actually get this feedback early during the design phase. And this is one of the major benefits of developing the Java platform in the open, that we get this sort of feedback in the development cycle right to the people who are actually making these features happen. And of course, you're also welcome to help us fix bugs and find regressions and all that. To do so, you can get the EA binaries for Java 12, for example. We are in the release candidate phase right now, and try it out with your code and run your test suite on it. If everything goes well, excellent, you're ready for Java 12. If something goes wrong, let us know about it so we can actually go in and try and fix it in time. So in summary, we've done a lot of work over the past couple of years to make Java development a lot more open. We have changed the release model to make it simpler, to make it clear where the commercial, what the commercial options are and what the open source options are, and in fact, started to deliver an open source option directly from Oracle. And we have a lot of things in the pipeline for future releases. And you can follow all of this in the open on openjdkjava.net. You can follow the various Java magazine and information we put out on our blogs. And of course, you can participate in the conversations we have with the community on Twitter and other channels. And not in the least, you can also participate in conversations we have around the technology on the mailing lists directly with the developers responsible for making the future Java with you. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to seeing you in my JDK 11, JDK 12 presentation later today.